this is Katie with Crafting with Katie. For my card today, I'm using the Strathmore Bristol paper, which is great for watercolor, and My Creative Time Best Friends background. And I'm using this paper because I want to be doing a ironed off embossing technique. So I'm beginning by using my powder tool to just make sure that I'm not going to have any stray embossing on there. So I'm making sure I have it all powdered up really well. And then I'm going to take my stamp and get it all covered up with Versamark ink. Once I'm sure I have a really good coating of Versamark, I'm going to place my paper right on top of the stamp and just really press all over to make sure that the image gets onto my paper quite well. And then I'm just going to add some Ranger Clear embossing powder, just making sure to get completely over the entire card and not missing any sections. You can see the nice shine of the embossing here. Now I'm ready to watercolor with my everything taped down onto the cutting board. So I'm using some Tim Holtz Distress ink. I have picked raspberry, dried marigold. I'm just putting these on an acrylic block, and spun sugar. And I'm just going to use a water brush and kind of randomly paint them onto the watercolor paper. So there's kind of no rhyme or reason here. I'm just going to randomly color them on. I'm going to speed up the video here, but you're going to see at one point I kind of pause because I'm noticing that it's looking a little bit light for the technique I'm using. There needs to be a good contrast between the white embossing and the paint. So at one point I pause and I pull in some Spice Marmalade, which is just a bit of a deeper orangey gold color. So now that I've let the watercolor air dry, I have it on my desk with a towel on it, and I'm putting it between two sheets of just regular computer paper, and I'm ironing it with my iron set on a cotton setting. And what this is doing is lifting up the embossing. So you can see the embossing kind of showing up, all that shininess on the typing paper. So you can see it doesn't get it all up at once. So you have to go ahead and get a new piece of paper and repeat this several times before you get all off. And then after 4 or 5 times, you'll see that you have a totally smooth matte finish with no shininess at all. It's a really cool effect. Now I'm going to use the My Creative Time Bunch of Fun Circles dies, and I'm using the largest one to die cut a circle in the background I've created for the background of my card. And I'm also going to use the Light the Candle stamp and die set to make this cute little cupcake. And I'm going to be die cutting that out of watercolor paper. To stamp the cupcake, I'm using my Misty tool because that will help me get it centered just right on the little die cut. So I am going to ink up my little cupcake and stamp it directly onto just a plain white sheet of paper. And then I have the negative of the die cut that was created when I die cut the little cupcake. And I'm just placing it exactly around the stamped image. And then I have some little magnets that I purchased when I bought my Misty, and I'll use those to hold the negative down. And then once that is all set up, I can just pop the little cupcake right inside of the negative. And then I can ink up the cupcake again. And then once I stamp it, it'll be centered just perfectly. So now I'm going to color the cupcake, and I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens. So I just went around the outside of the frosting, and I'm just using a regular watercolor brush and pulling the color in and just adding more ink when needed. And I just have sped this up so you can see the coloring process. cupcake looks very cute on the watercolor background, and I'm going to be using this For My Sweet Friend sentiment that comes from the same My Creative Time stamp and die set. Now I want to use this die from the Vintage Stitch Label collection, but it's a little bit too long for my sentiment, so I'm going to adjust it a little bit. To get my die cut just the right size for the sentiment, I ran it through the Vagabond and then ran it through again with the die along the edge to get a straight edge, doing a partial die cut. To go behind the watercolor circle, I used the scalloped circle die from Bunches of Fun Circles, and I also am using the same die to make my card base by folding a piece of white cardstock in half and then lining up the scallop circle so a little edge of it is hanging over the top and then running it through the Vagabond machine. I'm using my ATG to adhere all of these parts together. To add a little more interest on the outside, on the pink area, I thought it'd be nice to have some white stitching lines, so I used a white gel pen around there. And then I just kind of played with the placement here, and then went ahead and adhered everything together. And then for the final touch, I'm just going to add some Pretty Pink Posh sparkling clear sequins. Just scatter like 5 of those around here. And that'll pretty much do it for this card. So thank you so much for watching, and you can find out more about the products I used on my blog, craftingwithkatie.com.